Today we are making one of my favorite patterns ever, the Calo Top. It's a beginner-friendly pattern which I love to make in linen, and my favorite part, it has an option for a mini dress too. I love it so much because really it is not a pattern. You just need two identical rectangles, 1 centimeter wide elastic band, an erasable fabric pen, your standard sewing kit, and a sewing machine with a zigzag stitch. I will be linking everything I use down below if that helps. In this video and with the free sewing pattern you'll have to download, I will be giving you all the measurements, lengths, tips, everything you need step by step to replicate exactly the top or the mini dress version. Today I will be making the top, but if you want to do the dress, the steps are the exact same. You just will be cutting a longer rectangle. Don't worry because you'll find the exact measurements by downloading the pattern. Let's get started. The fabric that I'm using today is a medium weight linen from Etsy. This exact linen is my number one fabric of choice whenever I'm doing the Calo pattern. Any woven fabric will work. Before we start, I want to say, if at any point in this video you have questions or doubts, don't hesitate to leave a comment or reach out by DM. I'll be super happy to help. The first thing you will need to do is download the free pattern from my website. Find this table and focus on the fabric section. I'm doing the top, so I'll be cutting two rectangles measuring 57 by 37 centimeters. If I was doing the mini dress, I would cut two rectangles measuring 57 by 60.5. All measurements already include seam allowance and hems. We'll use the rest of the table in the next steps. This is a hack I always use when cutting a straight line through linen or a thick woven fabric. First, make a small cut and find a thread or two in the middle of the cut. Gently pull it to reveal a perfectly straight line to guide your scissors. The thread might break, so you will need to do it in sections, but it's much better than having to measure everything and drawing a straight line or whatever other method you use. Although this trick doesn't work with all fabrics, so don't worry if it doesn't with yours. Once we have the two rectangles, if you have an overlock machine, then go ahead and overlock the four sides like this. If you're doing the mini dress, it's the exact same. Just be sure to overlock the sides and not the top or bottom. Now align both pieces together, pin both sides, and sew a straight line to create a tube. Remember to backstitch at the start and the end of the seam. Then you're going to press the seam open like this. For this next step, grab your ruler and fabric pen. We're going to draw the horizontal lines where the 5 elastics will go like this. Find the table again and look at the elastic placement section. These 5 numbers are where you need to draw the marks on the fabric for each of the 5 elastics. On top, you'll need to draw a mark too at 1.5 and 2.5 centimeters for the top hem. The starting point will always be the edge of the fabric. So, in this example, I am drawing at 1.5 and 2.5 for the hem, and then at 3.5, 7, and so on for the 5 elastic bands. Remember to draw on the wrong side of the top. As you see, the first 2 lines are for the hem, which I'll explain in a second, and the other 5 are for the elastics. We'll place the elastic just under the line we draw. One more time, marking at 1.5 and 2.5 for the hem, and then whatever the pattern says for your size. Of course, measure yourself and see if this placement is something you are happy with, and feel free to adjust if not. Draw these little lines approximately every 10 centimeters or so. Once you have done this for the whole circumference of the top, connect the dots and draw horizontal lines all the way for the 5 elastic rows. This feels like a hassle right now, but trust me, you will thank this later when we're sewing the straight zigzag lines with the elastic. For the bottom hem, draw little marks at 2 centimeters and 3 centimeters away from the bottom edge. Small pause to show you the magic of this pen. Draw freely over any fabric, then press and it disappears. So no need to wash the garment or anything before wearing. This has been a total game changer for me. How I like to do the hem is first fold the fabric up until the first mark, and then fold again up until the second mark like this. I pin every few centimeters, and only if the fabric is very stiff do I press before sewing. I find this is the fastest and cleanest way, and I really like how it looks. After pinning, I do the same for the bottom hem, which is a little bit bigger than the top hem. Once done, we sew along the edge and press the hem carefully as to not to erase the horizontal lines we drew earlier. Now we have the fabric part done, let's move on to the elastic. This is how it will look once we sew in the elastics. In the sewing pattern, I recommend a specific elastic length, but before cutting in, please check it works for you. Every elastic is different, and unless you're using my exact one from Amazon, which I have linked below, You will probably need to test it yourself. I'm using 1 centimeter wide elastic and I recommend you do that too. To test it on your body, wrap it around just below your bust and make sure it is somewhat tight. Keep in mind, it will become 10% looser or so once you sew it, as we are poking many holes into it and debilitating the elastic. So it should be a little bit tighter than you want it to be. Make sure to add 2 centimeters of allowance on each side. The measurement in the sewing pattern does not include this allowance, so be sure to add it on both ends. What we'll do now is fold the elastic in half and draw a line halfway. Fold it in half again and draw a line halfway of the half, so at a quarter and then 3/4 of the elastic. When you fold the second time, make sure you are aligning the drawn line on the ends and not the edge of the elastic like this. Repeat again for all 5 elastics. Now, once we have all 4 marks on all 5 elastics, we will pin the ends together and create a loop like this. Place 2 pins separate enough at each side so you have space to sew in the middle. And of course, repeat for the 5 elastics. To join the elastics, you will sew back and forth like this to create a sort of zigzag. Once you're done, remove the pins and clean up the threads, as well as cut the excess fabric from each end. Back to the fabric, align the seams together at the center and draw a line at both edges of the fabric like this. This will act as a guide to align our elastic bands later on, so the shirring we create is even throughout the whole circumference. The next part is where we sew the elastics in. Before that, I really recommend you practice a bit on a square piece of fabric until you get the hang of it and how your sewing machine responds. This is just some of my initial tests when I started working on this design over a year ago. Moving on to sewing machine settings. If you have my same machine, you will copy the exact settings you see on screen. And if you have a different one, what you're looking for is a wide, long zigzag stitch. It's important you practice and test different stitches before sewing into the final piece. We're going to start by aligning the start of the elastic loop with the side seam from the fabric. The elastic should be just below the line we have drawn. Once they are aligned, throw in a pin about 2 centimeters back from the side seam without stretching the elastic. You'll quickly notice how the next line drawn on the elastic will match with the line on the fabric. Once you're ready, backstitch without stretching the elastic to secure it in place. Align the elastic and fabric marks and pull the first section together like this. Start sewing the zigzag and remember to keep the elastic just below the drawn line and aligned always with the next section. Once you reach the end of the section, align the next one. Pull again the fabric and elastic flat and sew. Keep doing this until you finish the first row. Backstitch again and congratulations, you have your first row done. This is more or less how the zigzag should look like. Now moving on to the second row. Align the start of the elastic with the seam where we started before. And again, place a pin 2 centimeters back from the seam without stretching. Backstitch, and starting on the second row, you'll notice it is much easier if you pull the fabric from the back like this to be able to sew straight and flat lines. So one hand you'll pull from the back and one hand you'll pull from the front with the elastic aligned to the next section. With this complicated thing we have going on, you sew and sew until you finish the row, basically. sometimes I notice the elastic has moved away from the guidelines. So we stop sewing, and with my left hand, I make sure to align it again and continue sewing. Now we're going to do the exact same for the next 3 rows. I promise you'll be a pro elastic sewist by the end of this tutorial. Next up is the most important step and my personal favorite. Turn the fabric right sides out and press it. Press it very well and thoroughly to flatten it out and to remove the fabric pen. I swear this step makes all the difference. In general, when sewing, if you want a professional, crisp, clean look, you should be pressing after single every single thing you sew. Here I am pressing the folds straight down to train them to lay flat and not open too much and go all over the place, but that's my personal preference. The last step is to sew in a studio sewn label really quick. And you're done. The Calo top or mini dress is ready. This is how the final construction looks like, and if you followed all the directions, yours should be similar too. Super stretchy, comfortable, and cute. If you attempt to sew this, please let me know by leaving a comment or sending a photo by DM. I love seeing them. See you soon.